Good morning. It's very early in the morning, and I just wanted to get on for a few reasons. First, to say thank you to everybody and anybody that wished me a happy birthday yesterday. It was a quiet birthday, no birthday cake, but cream cheese frosting with a candle. I ate maybe half the thing. So, it's what you do on your 58th birthday when you live on your own, by yourself. I don't know where the lighting's going to be. Oh, there. Maybe you see me better. I don't know. Anyways, I just finished a book that I've been reading for months because I'm a voracious reader and I read many things at a time just to keep my brain works different. I've told you all this before, but I believe this gentleman wrote this book during 2020 and it got published in 2022. And there's a few things in here that I'm going to read because I think it has a lot to do with what we have today and what's going on in the world. So, when he talks about Homo sapiens, humans, what we are, and kind of, I think, where this world is taken itself, there's been some people that have been very, very greedy and very, very just thinking they're smarter than everybody else. And the story is about a mother, a son, and a daughter who are very intelligent people, scientists. And why I love the book is my scientific mind took over. And it's a book that makes you think when you read, and you really have to like science to want to read this book. But he makes a statement in here, and then I'm going to read a letter that he wrote to his daughter and his wife that he had to walk away from because he was so compromised in his life, hiding from the government because of the things that he knew and the things that he was going to do. So, this is what he describes the human race as. We were a monstrous, thoughtful, selfish, sensitive, fearful, ambitious, loving, hateful, hopeful species. Let me read that again. We were a monstrous, thoughtful, selfish, sensitive, fearful, ambitious, loving, hateful, hopeful species. We contained within us the potential for great evil, but also for great good. And we were capable of so much more than this. So, and I'm going to read some of this letter that he wrote to his wife and daughter about the things that he did. And the gist of it is his mom and his sister were of the belief that they needed to kill off population to save the rest of the world. Now, to me, that is no empathy or anything for anybody. That's just wanting to be right. And I say that a lot in a lot of my videos about having to be right, having to be that, So I'm going to read this and then have a few comments about it, and then you can take it for what you want, okay? My Beth, my Ava. Kara and my mother believed they could stop humanity from destroying itself by increasing our collective intelligence and reason. They built an upgrade to ramp up those abilities, and despite Kara's massive intellect, she was still willing to kill 1 billion people. But my sister was right about one thing. We will die out in the next century if nothing changes. And I think I discovered why our species seems so willing to let this happen. One child dies in a well, the world watches and weeps, but as the number of victims increases, our compassion tends to diminish. At the highest number of casualties, wars, tsunamis, acts of terror, the dead become faceless statistics. They call this compassion fade, but in reality, it's our genetic inheritance. All that adaptation from our ancestry persists in our DNA. It's true. In the late 20th century, an anthropologist and evolutionary psychologist named Robin Dunbar proposed a theory that a Homo sapiens can only care about, identify with, and maintain stable relationships with 150 people. This number correlates to the size of the social groups in our evolutionary past. When we were Homo erectus, we lived in small hunter-gatherer groups bonded by social constructs. Gosh, Lori. Back then, only caring about our immediate group was advantageous. It helped us defend our tribe. It helped us advance and survive. But that limitation carried forward. Today, in a given tragedy, we can overlay the faces of our family, friends, and coworkers on only 150 people. Beyond that, compassion fades, but not because we're evil. Our emotional hardwiring can't cope with it. We're living in a global community of, in the book, it's 10 billion, where I think we're at, 8 billion, with brains that can only feel compassion for our immediate clan. Except those. And those of you out there know who I'm talking about, except those who have tapped in. Other factors come into play, such as distance. A tragedy across the world is harder to feel compassion for than one in our neighborhood. People who don't look like us are more challenging to identify with. And if our species has a problem with apathy and feeling compassionate for the pain of others in real time, how can we expect others to conjure compassion for a tragedy that hasn't even happened yet? The victims of Homo sapiens' demise haven't even been born. What emotional incentive do we have to make the sacrifices that will save future generations if our brains aren't capable of caring about them sufficiently? My mother once posited that we are not rational beings. We read about all the looming threats in the paper, we watch it on the news, and then we get on with our day. And yet some of that is thanks to our ability to hide from reality with denial, with cognitive dissonance with magical thinking. But she forgot the most important thing. In the absence of compassion, selfishness is the most rational response of all. Our species' superpower is not caring. We merely exercise that ability. We don't have an intelligence problem. We have a compassion problem. Thus, far more than any other single factor, it's what's driving us toward extinction. After Kara's death, I spent a year poring over my mother's genetic data from the story of you, with a focus on gene systems connected to compassion. I found one that programs the volume of key prefrontal cortex subregions, which determine an individual's mentalizing skills. Right here, which determines the size of our social group, which directly controls the ability to feel compassion. I also found one that controls dorsal portions of the medial prefrontal cortex, which lights up when people feel empathy for strangers. Our brains evolved to help in-group members for a very good reason. But what we need to survive as a species is the ability to care about strangers, especially people who haven't been born yet. So I built a compassion upgrade. Our beta group experienced increases in compassion and curiosity. They presented a heightened concern for strangers and an almost compulsive need to understand one another. 10 months ago, after extensive testing, I sent 100 people to the ends of the earth, all infected with a viral vector that carried my upgrade. My super spreader shed virus as they flew across the Atlantic and Pacific, as they walked the concourses of Charles de Gaulle and Heathrow, listened to the most sublime music in the world at the Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires, cruised the shopping malls of Mongco District in Hong Kong, Shibuya Crossing, Times Square, football stadiums from Madrid to Manchester, Red Square, and the Forbidden City. So far, more than 50% of the world's population has received my upgrade, and we're already seeing modest changes in public policy and online discourse. I can even feel it moderating the colder effects of my prior upgrades. We decided against announcing the upgrade, but it's important to me that you both know what I've done. Will you be horrified by my hubris? Am I no better than my mother or Kara, thinking my intellect gave... This is an important part. Will you be horrified by my hubris? Am I no better than my mother or Kara, thinking my intellect gives me the right to determine the course of humanity? Few people come to mind. They think they're smarter. I don't know the answer to that question, just as I'm not sure if my upgrade will do what I hope or of what unintended consequences it might reap. What I do know is that, Ava, you're inheriting a world at the brink of collapse. I came before you, which makes this my fault. I couldn't do nothing. Maybe none of it matters. Maybe it's just our time. Humans have had 300,000 years on this planet. We lived from the Stone Age to the Space Age. We split the atom and sequenced our own DNA and built machines that could think. But for all our progress, 10 million people die of hunger every year. We have hyperloops and rampant nativism. Phones more powerful than the computers that took us to the moon, but no more coral reefs. And year after year, nothing really changes. If there's a solution, it has to lie in rescuing us from our ambivalence, our apathy. Whatever happens next, I tried my best. I gave up everything that wasn't already taken from me, and I finally walked out from under my mother's long, long shadow. As you read this, I'll be driving west. I have unfinished business in Glasgow, Montana. I want you to know that if I could make things go back to the way they were, I'd do it in a second. But alas, there are no reverse gears in life. When I think of the old Logan, it's like considering an entirely separate being, and in moments I choose not to control. I feel a fierce loss for him. I suspect that if we all had perfect memory, we would all grieve the older version of who we used to be, the way we grieve departed friends. But even though I have changed from the Logan you once knew, the part of me that loved you madly remains. As I finish this letter, I am sitting in a car across the street from a place I used to call home. It's the night before Ava's graduation, and through the front window I can see the two of you and John in the living room. I think you're playing a game. There's definitely a lot of laughter, and I cannot escape the thought that you look like a family. This hurts me deeply, and it makes me happy, all at the same time. What do you call a heart that is simultaneously full and breaking? Maybe there's no word for it, but for some reason it makes me think of rain falling through sunlight. It's an excellent read, but so much of it correlated for me in the sense of, why aren't these brilliant masterminds looking for something to help humanity, to make us extend our compassion and empathy for others? That there should be no diversity, no skin, religion, things that affect the way we see other people, and that our brains should be able to handle empathy outside of the 150 people that he says. Yes, it may be fictional, but I believe a lot of this to be true. Why can't we have empathy for strangers? It's why I quit watching the news 10 years ago, because it hurt my heart. Just think of if they would have used the good to create a vaccine that helped humanity versus trying to kill us. Food for thought. I love y'all so much. I'll see you soon.